Deep in the Slieve Bloom Mountains, they say something moves under the moon, small, silent, and unforgiving. These are the Moon Fairies, guardians of the Blackthorn, and judges of anyone who dares to enter their grove. Hidden deep in the Slieve Bloom region lies a grove untouched by roads or farms. Here, the Blackthorn trees twist upward like claws, forming a circle older than written history. Villagers say this grove is a doorway, a place where the veil between the human world and the fairy realm grows thin, and where the Moon Fairies watch every trespasser. For generations, people kept their distance, but not everyone listened. Some were curious, some were brave, and some were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. And of all the stories whispered in the Slieve Bloom region, one name is always spoken first. In 1874, a young woman named Niamh O'Sullivan walked into the grove at dusk. Locals had told her the stories of the Moon Fairies and the hidden powers of the Blackthorn trees. She laughed at their warnings. She believed in reason, not superstition. But as she moved deeper into the grove, the moon rose, casting silver light that touched the sharp, twisted thorns, and everything changed. Niamh heard rustling between the trees, quick, playful, but deeply unsettling. Tiny lights flickered like fireflies, yet they moved with purpose, darting and circling in ways that defied natural movement. She froze, unable to look away. Her diary later described what she had seen as shapes dancing, small, fast, watching. When she finally returned home hours later, she was pale, shaking, and silent. From that night on, she claimed that the shadows whispered secrets to her, secrets she never revealed to anyone. A cold, moonlit night lay over Slieve Bloom as a carter named Padraig Callanan guided his horse along the narrow trail near the hidden grove. He was returning from a long delivery, exhausted and eager to reach home before dawn. But as the trees thickened around him, the air shifted. The horse shivered, its breath forming silver clouds. Padraig heard something soft, rhythmic, like tiny feet tapping on hollow wood. He slowed. The sound circled him. Then, a sudden flash of white light streaked through the branches, followed by others, dancing in loops. Padraig froze. The horse bolted. Witnesses later found the cart overturned at the grove's edge, Padraig trembling and repeating the same line again and again. They danced around me, 3 of them, and the road vanished. He never set foot near the grove again. In winter of 1899, an elderly midwife named Maya Quinn was called to deliver a child in a cottage near the grove. As she returned home in the early hours, moonlight spilled across the path. She saw them before she heard them, small, pale shapes moving between the branches, gliding rather than walking. Their faces were unreadable, but their eyes glowed with a cold, bluish light. One fairy drifted close to her, stopping inches from her lantern. It raised a hand, delicate, translucent, and pointed to the Blackthorn trees. Maya understood. She hurried home. The next day, she warned the village. A child will vanish before spring unless the grove is respected. 3 weeks later, a young boy wandered too close to the Blackthorn. Though he was found unharmed, he spoke of little silver people calling to him from the roots. Maya never doubted her vision again. Long before written records, a traveling harper named Eamon Bryady took shelter in the grove during a full moon. Seeking only a quiet place to rest, he settled beneath a blackthorn tree and began to tune his harp. But the air grew strangely still. His strings began to vibrate on their own, producing a haunting melody he had never heard. Moments later, tiny glowing figures gathered around him, forming a half circle. They listened silent, motionless. Eamon, terrified, played. The melody grew faster, sharper, almost painful. Villagers found him collapsed beside his harp, fingers bloody from playing through the night. When asked what happened, he whispered, "The song wasn't mine. They played through me." He never played music again. During a summer surveying project, archaeologist Dr. Fiona Walsh mapped ancient sites around Slieve Bloom. While examining the grove, her compass spun erratically, and her equipment malfunctioned. She noticed strange patterns etched into the soil, circles and spirals glowing faintly under moonlight. She sketched them. That night, she camped nearby. Around midnight, whispers drifted through the trees, repeating her name in a high, childlike voice. Small lights gathered above her tent, forming the same spiral pattern she had drawn. Fiona fled the next morning, abandoning her camp. Her map, still displayed in a regional archive, contains a handwritten note. These markings are not human, and they are not dormant. Two brothers, Colin and Patrick Rowan, aged 12 and 9, disappeared while gathering firewood near the grove. A search party found nothing for 2 days. On the third morning, the boys walked out of the forest unharmed, clothes clean, eyes distant. When questioned, they said they had been playing with moon children who float. They described a ring of glowing trees, a dance they couldn't refuse, and a tall figure with a crown of thorns made of silver light. Both boys grew up healthy, but neither ever returned to the woods. Patrick, before his death in 1983, left a final note. They wanted us to stay, and sometimes I think part of us did. Each night, lamplighter Sean Kelleher walked the winding village paths, lighting oil lamps one by one. His route ended close to the old grove, where the trees grew so thick they nearly touched the road. One fog-heavy evening, Sean noticed an extra light flickering inside the grove, soft, silvery, moving up and down like a lantern being swung by a child. Thinking it was a lost villager, he stepped in. Seconds later, every lamp behind him blew out at once. The forest went black except for that single ghostly glow. When Sean approached, the light split into dozens of tiny orbs, circling him in a spiraling dance. Villagers found his lamp abandoned at the grove's mouth. Still warm, Sean was discovered at dawn, lying under a blackthorn, whispering, "They led me where light could not follow." He never returned to his lamplighter's route. A stubborn woodcutter named Thomas Doran ignored every warning. Blackthorn wood, he believed, burned longer than oak, and he was determined to harvest it. Late one afternoon, he struck the first tree. The axe bounced back as if hitting iron on the second strike. A shrill, ringing cry echoed through the grove. On the third, the forest erupted with movement, small glowing shapes darting between the branches. Their light sharp and angry, Thomas fled, leaving his axe embedded in the trunk. That night, his cottage shook violently, as if something circled it. Spinning lights flashed under the door, and whispered voices repeated his name. By morning, the axe had been returned, placed neatly beside his bed. Thomas burned it and never touched Blackthorn again. During a full moon wedding in a nearby village, guests reported seeing a strange figure watching from the grove. A woman in a long silver veil, unmoving, glowing faintly under the moonlight. The groom's brother approached her, thinking she was a late arriving guest, but as he neared, the figure turned, her face blank, quite like pressed linen, her eyes bright and hollow. Behind her, dozens of tiny lights fluttered like sparks. He ran back in terror. When the wedding party gathered the next day, they found a perfect circle of footprints in the dew near the grove. Too small to be human, too many to count. Locals still whisper that the Silver Bride is not a ghost, but a moon fairy emissary appearing during weddings to remind humans of ancient pacts forgotten. A poacher named Rory Madden set traps near the grove despite repeated warnings. "Fairies don't scare me," he laughed. That night, a strange humming filled the air, high, musical, unsettling. When Rory checked his snares, he found them empty, except for a single silver thorn placed inside each trap. Ignoring the omen, he returned home. At dawn, he awoke with a burning pain across his chest. A pattern had appeared on his skin, tiny crescent shapes arranged like a lunar cycle, glowing faintly. Doctors found no explanation. The marks lingered for years, dulling only during the new moon. Rory never poached again. He told villagers, "They warned me first, then they marked me so I'd never forget." Long ago, a pilgrim caravan passed through Slieve Bloom on its way to Clonmacnoise. Tired and lost, they set up camp near the grove. That night, strange bells rang in the forest, soft, metallic, impossible to locate. One pilgrim, young Bridget Holoran, stepped toward the sound, entranced. The others watched in horror as small glowing figures surrounded her, lifting her veil, inspecting her face with childlike curiosity. A bright flash filled the grove. Bridget collapsed, When she awoke, she spoke in a different voice, calm, distant, telling the group to leave before moonrise. They obeyed. Bridget never remembered the incident, but for the rest of her life, she claimed she dreamt of silver children dancing under thorn trees. For generations, Slieve Bloom has carried the same warning. The grove does not forget, and the Moon Fairies do not forgive. These are not tales of evil, but of ancient boundaries where every step is a trespass. Yet still the lights drift through the branches, the whispers linger in the dark, and the Moon Fairies watch, waiting for the next soul drawn to their silver glow.